Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. A late night kind of Let's Talk Chelsea, probably one of the latest I've done. Typically, I was actually out and about when this news broke about Wesley Fofana, Chelsea. What it looks like finally getting the deal done. A breakthrough in talks that has needed to happen with each day passing, getting closer and closer to transfer deadline day. But it looks like Chelsea have got their man eventually in Wesley Fofana. Let's get to the reports. But before we do, make sure, guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, hit the like button so more people can get involved in the discussion. I've got some comments from you guys as well coming through on Twitter, so I'll read some of them out over your reaction to this big news. But let's get into it. So firstly, we had reports from France, but also here from The Athletic, the big guns kind of reporting about it. Chelsea have reached an agreement to sign Leicester defender Wesley Fofana. Leicester had rejected an improved offer from Chelsea for the 21-year-old Frenchman earlier this week, but a breakthrough appears to have now been reached. Chelsea had previously made two offers for the French defender, but both fell below Leicester's valuation. Fofana was left out of Leicester's squad by Brendan Rodgers for the 2-1 defeat by Southampton last Saturday, as he asked not to play. So it looks like Chelsea have agreed this deal. Other reports are kind of suggesting it's going to be sort of closer to 80 million, high 60s, with a lot of add-ons that could take it up to him being the most expensive defender in world football. But it isn't quite going to be at least the poster sort of 85 million that I think Leicester wanted, like they got for Harry Maguire, that has kind of stuck with Maguire since because of his struggles. Kind of a lot of reaction to this, obviously, with Fofana and what it means. I always felt this was a simple kind of equation. I guess you could say I'm not making a very strong point here, because you could say it's the same for every single transfer that has ever happened in history. But just in a sense of whether a deal could be done at this point in the window, and given Leicester's previous history, I think no matter what Brendan Rodgers ever said in the past, I think we knew Leicester were always going to be willing to come to the table if Chelsea offered the money they wanted. I think they have got an assist, absolutely, from the player himself, wanting this move so desperately, making it abundantly clear very, very early on in this transfer saga that he would be willing to make a move to Stamford Bridge, and him pushing internally, making it very clear he wanted the move to Chelsea, along with, I think the defining action of this was him being taken out of the squad last Saturday. I just do. I think that's always a telltale sign. Resolution has to be found eventually, and it did. And obviously the resolution has been Chelsea signing Wesley Fofana, unless there's any late twists, unless Barcelona finds some money from somewhere to hijack this one. I think Chelsea will be signing Fofana before the deadline day. At least it looks, from all reports from very legitimate sources. Adam Newson as well, my good friend, reporting similar from Kings Meadow. He's been reporting on the academy game tonight. And obviously the unrest at Leicester has kind of, I think, provoked things, maybe made the negotiations a little bit easier from Chelsea when they could have been a lot harder. But Leicester obviously are always going to drive, and we're always going to want a higher price for Wesley Fofana this summer. And probably also knew that, given how quickly things can change in football, that valuation or fee that they could get might never be as high as this summer. You know, you never know in football. Chelsea had the chance to sign Jules Koundé. They didn't want to for whatever reason. It is believed that Thomas Tuchel did not quite rate the player. I still personally disagree with that. I still think that Jules Koundé would have been a very adequate or comparable player to Wesley Fofana. I have to be honest. I may look stupid in time. And listen, this summer has all been about backing Thomas Tuchel. I just think with Koundé, with the unrest, with kind of wanting to put players in place at the right time to give them a full pre-season, that could have been done. But that is the past now, right? We can't, get angry about that now. Chelsea have got their man eventually, and it is Wesley Fofana. And what Fofana has over Jules Koundé, despite being a little bit younger, is of course Premier League experience, which Chelsea in their transfer business this summer have quite clearly valued, not only in the young players they bought like Carney Chukwuemeka, but also Raheem Sterling, Mark Cucurella, and of course now in Wesley Fofana. These are players that know the league, and we know the benefit from Leicester with N'Golo Kante and Ben Chilwell. Of course, Danny Drinkwater, we don't talk about him, but that value in Premier League ready experience is of course a plus when you're bringing in players. And I think the biggest winner out of this is me, because I don't get to watch this player play out of position anymore. But I do think one of the big winners of this transfer is Reece James. No longer, hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll see what happens tomorrow, but no longer has to play out of position at right centre back, because I accepted it in emergency situations. I could accept it against Spurs, but seeing Reece, I think, really restrained in that role would have been a great shame. If you've got a defender back there who's not only competent but also has a bit of pace and mobility about him, I think it gives a license to Reece James that he didn't have at times last season, particularly in those remaining weeks when Cesar Azpilicueta, a player of less speed at this age of his career, doesn't give you. As we see with a lot of great young defenders who are very competent with the ball, I think there are things that make him very suitable for what Tuchel desires in a Chelsea team. And also I think for the future, no matter who the coach is, I think there is a lot to be developed there with Fofana. I think he will be very adequate in a number of systems, which is quite clearly what you want as a signing. You don't want someone who's very specialist, very limited to one kind of system. And I think at his age, you are buying potential. This is kind of a bit like the Kai Havertz signing for me. In defence, you are kind of buying potential here. You are hoping he rises into the player many people think he will become in a defensive sense. Like Kai Havertz, people believe he's going to become one of the best attacking midfielders in the coming years. I think with Fofana, it's a very similar deal, and that's kind of how you justify the fee, I think, in your head. And also what Chelsea needed for the rest of this window. I think Chelsea's window now has been a success. It can still be slightly ruined by at least one more signing, Anthony Gordon, that I don't think is necessary. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, I think, is a massive risk, but I probably would take it given what I think Tuchel wants and also the lack of goals within this team. But I would still say Aubameyang is one of the bigger risks Chelsea could take. Just looking at some of your comments from a tweet I put out earlier, Matt Williams, of course, referencing Barcelona. I'm waiting for Barcelona to announce a fundraising telethon to hijack Fofana. Lewin says, just happy it's over. And Denchel kind of, very much alluding to my opinion on Reece James, right centre-back sorted for the next decade. Some other comments here, just very, very happy. I think a lot of people, despite the age, are very positive about Wesley Fofana, and I think that is the general feeling. I think at his age there is development to be had, there are years left, there are levels yet to get to, and given people who have watched Fofana a lot more than me, even before he made the move to Leicester, see a defender with huge potential. And it's not only about buying for the now, it's also about buying for the future. It's investing in the future. I think Fofana has already proved himself to be a very, very good young centre-back in the Premier League. And I think that hopefully for Chelsea that can make a quick impact. There may also be scope over the course of this season with Kalidou Koulibaly to move to a 4 at the back potentially. Of course, I think that links itself into midfield, but we could see that over the season. I could very easily see a back to Fofana and Koulibaly over the course of this season. We'll see how it plays out, how this impacts Trevor Chalobah. Did this really push Chalobah over the edge to get that loan? I still worry about that loan being sanctioned because of the sheer numbers Chelsea have. We walked into this summer wanting to strengthen, really rebuild the defence after the departures of Andreas Christensen and Antonio Rudiger. I still look at our numbers with Malang Sarr leaving as well, with Ethan Ampadu likely to leave on loan before the deadline, and I still personally feel that Chalobah, it would be very useful because he's not only, I think, a very good young centre-back who has said himself he could play along that sort of back three. He'd be happy to play on the left, potentially down the middle, and of course we know last season I think he was Chelsea's best right-sided defender when Tuchel was playing a back three last season. But also the amount of games that are going to kick in now, I worry that if you really are hoping, touch wood, that people stay fit, and that's I think what Tuchel needs before the World Cup. If all of his defenders stay fit, then it may not be the big problem or worry that I think about right now. But personally, I would still like to keep Chalobah because I feel like he offers a great backup, or at least a great option that could be the future of Chelsea. But obviously the player has his own sort of opinions on that situation and whether he is going to get the opportunity under Tuchel this season. And I think the reports of him wanting out so desperately, it seems, says enough about the way he feels about his chances, which is a bit of a shame. But let's be positive. I think Fofana is a good signing. I really hope that in a couple years, 3 to 4 years, we look back on this fee and feel that it was even a little bit cheap, maybe, or at least was exactly what Chelsea should have been paying for a talent of Fofana's age. The one thing I would say, and maybe I'm being unfair to the club, I would like to see the likes of Fofana, these talents that we have to overpay for, like double, triple. I feel that with a director of football, I'd like to see Chelsea try and uncover some of these players in the coming years. I know it's difficult for a club of Chelsea's size. They are probably always going to be paying a little bit more as kind of the profile, the stature, the money we have and the finance. That's always going to be the case for the big clubs in Europe compared to, say, a Brighton going in for a player from St Etienne compared to Chelsea. There's quite clearly always going to be that dynamic and expectation that Chelsea can pay a little bit more than others. But just that feeling that maybe in the coming years, because we have spent a lot this summer, can we uncover some of these players? And I think that's very well linked to the director of football, and also the fear that in this final week we could make a few signings that we come to regret. But Fofana, I don't think is going to be one of those. I think he's going to offer a lot of things that Tuchel needs in his defence. I think in terms of speed, in terms of mobility, in terms of energy, I think in terms of mentality, really wanting desperately to sign for Chelsea. This is also a player Chelsea have wanted for a while, and I think it's kind of been a bit of when and not if. I think Chelsea would have eventually tried seriously to buy this player, and it seems like obviously now this is the summer it happens. And I feel for a lot of people that I respect very much in the Chelsea community, who've been big fans and admirers of Fofana for a while, feel this was kind of the best option Chelsea could have gone for as kind of a younger centre-back, particularly on the right side. So let's hope he lives up to expectation. Let's hope this deal gets through. No sort of further scandal and saga to continue. Chelsea not only beat Leicester tomorrow, but we get Fofana signed, and hopefully we can see his debut potentially against Southampton on Tuesday, which may come a little bit too fast based on the game tomorrow and training and all of that stuff. But hopefully by the time we play West Ham the following weekend. So I'm also just happy this one ain't going to the deadline. It's done. It looks like it's finished. Chelsea have agreed to sign Wesley Fofana. Let me know your opinions in the comments below, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.